Recorded in the genealogy of Jesus, only 5 women are mentioned by name in the Gospel of Matthew: Tamar, Ruth, Bathsheba the wife of Uriah, and Mary. Their inclusion is no accident. Each carried a story marked by struggle, sacrifice, redemption, and extraordinary faith. Together, their lives reveal how God works through imperfect people to accomplish His perfect plan. Today, we will uncover the remarkable stories of the 5 women forever woven into the family line of Jesus Christ. Let's begin.
She didn't have a title. She didn't even have a husband to speak for her. All she had was a veil, a roadside, and a God who sees what men try to hide. The world passed her by. The family that owed her everything abandoned her. The promises made to her were broken, one by one, like dry branches snapped underfoot. She was left to sit in a widow's house, forgotten, voiceless, and dismissed. But God wasn't finished with her, not even close. Her name was Tamar. And this is not just a story about a woman who was wronged. This is a story about justice, about courage, about what happens when God decides to honor the one that people tried to erase. It begins with a man named Judah, the 4th son of Jacob, one of the 12 patriarchs of Israel. Judah was not a perfect man, not by a long shot. He had already played a shameful role in selling his own brother Joseph into slavery. He had walked away from his family, settled among the Canaanites, and made a life for himself apart from the covenant people of God. But time moved on. Judah found a wife, a Canaanite woman, the daughter of Shua. Together they had 3 sons, Onan, and Shelah. 3 sons. And for a while, life seemed to settle into something resembling normalcy. Then came the day Judah chose a wife for his firstborn son, Her name was Tamar. We don't know exactly where Tamar came from. The Bible doesn't tell us her father's tribe in detail. But what we do know is this: she was brought into the family of Judah. She became Er's wife. She was bound to this family by covenant, and she had every expectation of a future, of children, of belonging. But was wicked. The Bible says it plainly. Was wicked in the sight of the Lord, and the Lord put him to death. Just like that. No long illness, no warning. Was gone. Can you imagine that? You're a young woman. You've just entered a new family. You barely know your husband. And now he's dead. Not old, not sick, just gone. Taken by God himself because of the wickedness in his heart. Tamar was now a widow, young, childless, and sitting in a grief she hadn't asked for. But there was still a system in place, a law among God's people called levirate marriage. Under this custom, if a man died without children, his brother was obligated to marry the widow and raise up offspring in the dead brother's name so the family line would continue and the widow would be protected. So Judah went to his second son, Onan, and said, "Go into your brother's wife and perform the duty of a brother-in-law to her, and raise up offspring for your brother." Now Onan knew something. He knew that any child born to Tamar would be counted as Er's child, not his. That child would carry Er's inheritance, and Onan didn't want that. He was greedy. He was selfish. He wanted the rights of a husband without the responsibility. So Onan did something despicable. He used Tamar, but deliberately refused to give her a child. And God saw it, and Onan died too. 2 sons, 2 funerals, and Tamar still sitting there, still childless, still waiting. Now Judah had 1 son left, Shelah, the youngest, and by law, by tradition, by covenant promise, Shelah was supposed to be given to Tamar as a husband when he came of age. But Judah was afraid. He looked at Tamar, and I want you to understand what was going through his mind. He blamed her. In his grief and in his fear, Judah looked at this woman who had lost 2 husbands and thought somehow she is the problem. 2 of his sons were dead. The one thing they had in common was Tamar. And so instead of seeing a grieving widow, Judah saw a threat to his last remaining son. So he told her, "Go back to your father's house and live as a widow until Shelah is old enough." He sent her away, but it was a lie. The Bible tells us plainly Judah had no intention of giving Shelah to Tamar. He said the words to send her away. He made a promise he planned to break. And Tamar went back to her father's house, waiting, still waiting. Years passed. Judah's own wife died. He mourned, the grief faded, and eventually Judah was back on his feet, traveling with his friend Hira the Adullamite to oversee his sheep shearers. And Tamar heard about it. She heard that the man who owed her justice, the man who had made her a promise and broken it, was coming right through her area, and something rose up in her. Not revenge, not rage, something sharper than that. Resolve. She took off her widow's clothes. She wrapped herself in a veil. She sat down by the road near a place called Enayim, which literally means open eyes, as if the very name of that place was a prophecy, and she waited for Judah. When Judah saw her, he didn't recognize her. He saw a veiled woman sitting by the road and assumed she was a shrine prostitute. And Judah, the patriarch, the father of a tribe, the man who should have known better, went over to her and propositioned her. He offered to send her a young goat from his flock. She asked, "What will you give me as a pledge until you send it?" He gave her his signet, his cord, and his staff, his identification, the ancient equivalent of handing over your driver's license and signing your name. They were together, and then Tamar went home, put her widow's clothes back on, and waited. Judah sent his friend with the goat, but no shrine prostitute was found. The men of the area said, "There has been no cult prostitute here." And so Judah just let it go. He didn't want the embarrassment of people knowing what he'd done. He told his friend, "Let her keep the things, otherwise we shall be laughed at."
3 months went by, and then someone came to Judah with news. "Your daughter-in-law Tamar has been immoral, and moreover she is pregnant by immorality." Judah's response? Immediate, furious, self-righteous. "Bring her out and let her be burned." Can you feel the weight of that? A woman he had abandoned, cheated out of her rights, left in a widow's house to rot, and now that she was pregnant, he wanted to execute her. Not even a trial, not even a conversation, just burn her. They brought Tamar out, and as she was being led to her death, she produced 3 items: a signet, a cord, a staff. And she said calmly, deliberately, "The man to whom these belong is the one who made me pregnant. Please examine them. Whose are these? The signet, the cord, and the staff." The entire crowd went silent. Judah looked at them. He knew them. His own name was probably engraved on that signet. His hands trembled. His whole carefully constructed image, the patriarch, the elder, the man of standing, came crashing down in a single moment. And then Judah did something remarkable, something we don't always expect from men in power when they are caught. He told the truth. He said, "She is more righteous than I, since I did not give her to my son Shelah." More righteous. Him saying it, out loud, in front of everyone. That is the moment everything changed. Tamar was not burned. She was vindicated. The woman who had been stripped of her voice spoke. The woman who had been overlooked was seen. The woman who had been left with nothing became the mother of twins.
If this story is already moving you, Go ahead and hit that like and subscribe button right now so you never miss a story like this one. It truly means the world. And in case you want to learn how to generate consistent characters for your videos as well, do well to grab our consistent prompt pack below, link in the description. Now let's keep going.
When it came time for Tamar to give birth, the midwife noticed one baby stretched out his hand first. She tied a scarlet thread around his wrist and declared, "This one came out first." But then that baby pulled his hand back, and his brother came out instead. The midwife said, "What a breach you have made for yourself." And so he was named Perez, meaning breach. Then the baby with the scarlet thread on his wrist came out, and he was named Zerah, meaning brightness. 2 sons, born to a woman who almost had no sons, born to a woman the world wanted to silence. And I need you to understand the significance of what that means. Because when we open the book of Matthew, the very first chapter of the New Testament, and we read the genealogy of Jesus Christ, we don't just find kings and patriarchs, we find women. And not just any women. Women with complicated, painful, extraordinary stories. And right there, in Matthew chapter 1, verse 3, is the name Tamar. Judah, the father of Perez and Zerah, by Tamar. God didn't erase her name. God didn't hide what happened. God put her name in the lineage of his own son, deliberately, permanently, for all of history to read. The woman they tried to burn is an ancestor of Jesus. Let that sink in for a moment. This is what makes Tamar's story so powerful and so deeply personal for anyone who has ever been cheated out of what was rightfully theirs, anyone who has ever been sent away with a promise that was never kept, anyone who has ever been blamed for someone else's failure and left to carry the weight of it alone. Tamar knew what it felt like to have a family look at you and decide you were a problem to be managed, not a person to be honored. She knew what it felt like to sit in a widow's house day after day, watching the years go by and wondering if anyone would ever make things right. She knew what it felt like to have the law on your side and still lose. Because power doesn't always follow the rules, and the people who are supposed to protect you don't always do it. But here is what Tamar also knew, and what her actions tell us loud and clear. She knew her worth. She did not accept that her story was over just because someone powerful decided it was. She did not stay silent when silence meant erasure. She took a risk, a massive, life-threatening risk, to claim what was rightfully hers. Now, I want to be careful here. Some people read this passage and stumble over the method Tamar used, and that's a fair conversation to have. The Bible doesn't tell us Tamar was perfect. It doesn't need to. What the Bible does tell us is the verdict. Judah himself said she was more righteous than him. God did not condemn her. God blessed her. He gave her twins. He put her name in the lineage of the Messiah. The righteous judge of the universe looked at Tamar's situation, the betrayal, the abandonment, the risk she took, the courage she showed, and he said, "I see you," and he honored her. There is something else I want you to notice about this story, something that I think is often overlooked: Judah's transformation. This man, selfish, cowardly, complicit in his brother Joseph's slavery, willing to let an innocent woman burn, this man looked at Tamar's courage and was convicted. His confession in that moment, "She is more righteous than I," is not a small thing. In the ancient world, for a man of his status to publicly admit that a woman, a daughter-in-law, had acted with more integrity than he did, that was humbling, that was breaking. And if you follow Judah's story further into Genesis, you see that this moment changed him.
When the brothers eventually face crisis again involving Benjamin, it is Judah who steps forward, Judah who offers himself as a substitute, Judah who speaks with a depth of character he didn't have before.
Tamar's courage didn't just save her. It helped restore a man who needed to be confronted with his own sin. God uses the overlooked to reach the proud. He uses the forgotten to wake up the forgetful. He uses the ones sitting by the roadside to bring even the mighty to their knees. What a God! What a story! Because in the end, Tamar didn't just survive, she prevailed. She went from a widow's house, dismissed, destitute, stripped of her future, to becoming an ancestor of King David, an ancestor of Solomon, an ancestor of Jesus Christ himself. The world said she was finished. God said she was just getting started. Maybe you're reading this in a season that feels like Tamar's widow's house. Maybe someone made you a promise and broke it. Maybe you've been blamed for someone else's failure. Maybe you've been sitting and waiting for justice, for restoration, for someone to finally look at you and say, "I was wrong." I want you to hear this today. God sees exactly where you are. He has not forgotten the promises that were made to you. He has not lost track of what you are owed. And the enemy of your destiny, God has a way of making that person hand over their own signet ring, the very proof of what they've done at exactly the right moment. Your name is not forgotten, your story is not over, and the chapter God is writing for you right now might just end up being the most important one, because the God who wrote Tamar into the lineage of his own son still writes stories of justice and redemption today, and yours could be next. If this story stirred something in you today, if Tamar's courage gave you courage, please hit that like button and subscribe to this channel. We pour everything into these videos, and your support keeps these stories alive for someone who needs to hear them. Don't forget to hit the notification bell too, so you never miss the next one. God bless you, and we'll see you in the next story. Imagine you live in a big city. A city with massive walls around it. Walls so thick and so tall that people actually build their homes inside those walls. Like the wall is someone's house. That's how enormous these things are. And your whole life, everyone around you has told you, we are safe. Nobody can touch us. These walls will never fall. Now, imagine that one day you start hearing stories, whispers, rumors drifting in from the desert. Stories about a God, not one of the gods your people worship, not the silent stone statues in the temples, but a living God. A God who split an entire sea in half so his people could walk through on dry ground. A God who turned a rushing river into a road. And something deep inside your chest shifts. Because you've been praying to gods made of stone your whole life, and they have never answered, not once. So when you hear about this God, you don't laugh, you don't roll your eyes. You sit very, very still, and you listen. Her name was Rahab, and this is her story. Let's go back, way back.
Before we go further, if this story is moving you, please hit that like and subscribe button so you never miss another story like this.
To a time when an entire nation of people had been wandering in the desert for 40 years. 40 years! Can you imagine that? These were the children of Israel, the people of God. Their ancestors had been slaves in Egypt, one of the most powerful countries in the ancient world. But God had sent a man named Moses to rescue them, with 10 incredible plagues that brought Egypt to its knees, with the parting of the Red Sea, with miracles so impossible, so breathtaking, that everyone who heard about them had to stop and say, "Wait, what?" But even after all of that, all those miracles, the older generation had made a terrible mistake. When God said it was time to enter the promised land, they got scared. They said, "There are giants over there. We can't do this." And because they refused to trust God, they had to wander in that desert for 40 long, hard years until that fearful generation had passed away. But now, a new generation stood at the edge of the Jordan River, young, strong, ready. Their leader was a man named Joshua, a soldier, a man who 40 years ago had been one of only 2 people brave enough to say, "We can do this, God is with us," when everyone else was trembling. And God had spoken to Joshua again, clear as sunlight. "Be strong, be courageous, do not be afraid, for the Lord your God will be with you wherever you go." Joshua stood tall, because he knew what came next. To enter the Promised Land, they had to go through one city first, Jericho. Now, Jericho was no ordinary city. Think about the most defended, most unbeatable fortress you can picture. That was Jericho. Its walls were enormous, so wide that people lived right inside them. The whole city was like one giant locked box sitting right at the entrance to the entire land of Canaan. But here is the thing about Jericho that most people miss. The people of Jericho were terrified. Oh, they looked tough on the outside, gates shut, walls standing tall, soldiers at every post. But inside, their hearts were melting like ice cream on a summer afternoon, because those stories about Israel, about Egypt, about the plagues, about the Red Sea had traveled. They had crossed the desert and slipped right through the city gates like smoke under a door. Jericho knew something powerful was coming. They just didn't know what to do about it. And into this city, God quietly sent 2 young men, spies. Joshua chose them carefully. "Go," he told them, "look at Jericho, come back and tell me what we're dealing with." They crossed the Jordan, they slipped into the city, and they needed somewhere to stay, somewhere to observe without drawing attention. And by what I can only call the invisible hand of God, they ended up at the house of a woman named Rahab. Now, I need to stop here for a second because I want you to understand something about Rahab. The Bible doesn't hide who she was. Rahab was a woman with a reputation, the kind of person that good, respectable folks would cross the street to avoid. Looked down on, judged, written off. But here is what I love about God and what I love about this story. God doesn't see the way we see. We look at a person's past and we decide who they are. We look at their mistakes, their bad days, their reputation, and we say, already used up, already broken. But God looks at the heart. And Rahab's heart had been quietly, secretly, beautifully turning toward him for a long, long time. She had been listening to every whisper about the God of Israel that drifted through those city gates. She had held those stories in her mind late at night when the city was quiet. She had compared this God to the stone idol she grew up with, and she had already made her decision before those 2 strangers ever knocked on her door. So when 2 strangers, technically her enemies, showed up, she looked at them and she left them in. She hid them under stalks of flax laid out to dry on her rooftop, just ordinary bundles of plants, but she tucked those 2 men underneath them and made sure they were completely hidden. And she did it without being asked twice. That is courage. Now somebody had seen, maybe a neighbor, maybe a soldier, but word reached the king of Jericho almost immediately. Israelite spies in the city at the house of Rahab. The king sent his messengers straight to her door, a royal command. Bring out those men, they are spies.
And Rahab stood at her door, looked those messengers in the eye, and she lied. Her voice was calm, her expression was steady. Yes, the men came to me, she said, but I didn't know where they were from. At dusk, when they closed the city gate, they left. I don't know which way they went. Go after them quickly. You might still catch them. The messengers believed her. They turned around, rushed out the gate, and chased off into the dark, looking for 2 men who were at that very moment lying right above Rahab's head on her roof.
The city gates swung shut and locked behind those soldiers, and on the rooftop, hidden under bundles of flax, 2 young men waited quietly in the dark. When the city had settled and the danger had passed, Rahab climbed up to the roof. She sat beside these 2 men she had just risked everything for, 2 strangers, 2 enemies by every measure of politics and culture, and she opened her mouth, and what came out was not fear, not desperate bargaining. It was faith. "I know," she said, "that the Lord your God has given you this land." Not "I think," not "I've heard rumors," I know. We have heard how the Lord dried up the Red Sea when you came out of Egypt. We have heard what you did to the 2 kings you completely destroyed on the other side of the Jordan. When we heard these things, our hearts melted. Everyone's courage failed because of you. She had been carrying these stories for years, turning them over, testing them against the emptiness of her own gods, and she had arrived at a conclusion that almost nobody else in Jericho had dared to make, not because it was safe or easy, but because in the quiet of her own heart she had chosen to believe. And then she said something that is one of the most beautiful declarations in the entire Bible. "For the Lord your God, He is God in heaven above and on the earth below." A Canaanite woman in a condemned city, before she had seen a single miracle with her own eyes, she said, "Your God is the God." That is faith. But Rahab wasn't done, because real faith doesn't just speak, real faith moves. "Now," she begged, "swear to me by the Lord that you will show kindness to my family, because I have shown kindness to you. Spare my father, my mother, my brothers, my sisters, everyone who belongs to me. Promise me you will save us from death." She wasn't asking only for herself. Every person she loved was on her heart in that moment. She had made a choice that could get her killed if it went wrong, and she wanted a real promise. The spies listened. They understood the weight of what this woman had done. She had lied to a king for them, hidden them under her own roof, done all of that because she believed in a God she had never formally met. "Our lives for your lives," they said. "When the Lord gives us this land, we will treat you with kindness, we promise." A covenant, sealed on a dark rooftop between 2 spies and one very brave Canaanite woman. Not in a palace, not between kings, right there, under the stars, with a condemned city sleeping beneath them. Rahab lowered the 2 men from her window using a rope. Her house was built right into the city wall, so they could descend straight to the outside. Before they parted, she gave them one last piece of practical, smart wisdom. "Go into the hills, hide there for 3 days until the soldiers come back, then go on your way." And the spies gave her the sign, one small instruction, the thing that would determine who lived and who did not. "Tie this scarlet cord in the window, the one you let us down from, and bring everyone you love into this house. If anyone steps outside while we come through, we cannot protect them. But everyone who is inside this house with you, we will be responsible for their safety. We promise." Rahab agreed, and as soon as those men were gone, she walked to the window and she tied the cord. A small thread of red hanging in a window, visible from the outside over the city wall. Just ordinary rope dyed scarlet, that's all it was. But the promise of God was attached to it. Rahab then went straight to her family, every single one of them, her father, mother, brothers, sisters. She gathered them all. She told them what she had done, what she had been promised, and she said, Come into my house, stay here." I imagine how that conversation went. "Rahab, you did what? You hid Israelite spies? Are you out of your mind?" And she would have looked at them with calm, steady eyes and said, "Their God is real. If we stay inside, we will live." And they came because something in the way she said it made them believe. Meanwhile, the spies returned to Joshua with their report. "The Lord has surely given the whole land into our hands. Every single person over there is melting in fear because of us." Joshua arose early the next morning and moved the entire nation to the Jordan River. The Jordan was at flood stage, wild, rushing, impossible to cross by human means. But the priests lifted up the Ark of the Covenant and walked toward the water, and the moment their feet touched the edge, the river stopped. The waters piled up far upstream, and every man, woman, and child of Israel walked across on dry ground, a miracle their parents had heard about at the Red Sea, and now they were living it. When word reached Jericho, whatever courage remained was gone. Then came the moment that made no military sense whatsoever. God gave Joshua his battle plan, and it looked nothing like a battle plan.
For 6 days, the army of Israel would march around Jericho once a day, with 7 priests blowing ram's horn trumpets. And the people? Not one word. No shouting, no war cries, just silence. Just walking, just obedience. Day 1, once around, back to camp. Day 2, once around, silence. Day 3, 4, 5, 6. Can you imagine being inside Jericho watching this? Every morning you wake up, look over the wall, and there is an entire nation just walking around your city in complete silence. No attack, no siege weapons, just people walking. Some of them must have laughed at first. What on earth are they doing? But after day 3 or 4, that laughter probably faded because something about the silence, that quiet, patient, purposeful obedience was scarier than any war cry. And Rahab? I picture Rahab inside her house, her whole family gathered around her, hearing those trumpet blasts each morning growing louder and closer, and staying calm because she already knew. Then came the 7th day. They rose before dawn, and this time they marched around the city not once, 7 times, 7 full laps, priests blowing their trumpets, people walking in silence. And on that 7th lap, as the trumpets gave one long, sustained, powerful blast, Joshua turned to the people and cried out, "Shout, for the Lord has given you the city." And the people shouted. A sound rose from Israel unlike anything Jericho had ever heard. Not the desperate cry of soldiers fighting for their lives. This was the shout of a people who had already been told they won. A shout of faith before the evidence arrived. A shout of victory before the walls moved a single inch. And the walls of Jericho? Those great, unconquerable walls that had stood for generations came crashing down. Every soldier rushed straight in, not climbing rubble, straight in, because the walls had fallen completely flat. The battle was over before it had fully begun. But Joshua had not forgotten. In the middle of all the fire and victory and overwhelming chaos, Joshua turned quietly to his 2 spies. "Go," he said. "Go to the house of the woman who hid you. Bring her out. Bring out everyone who is with her, exactly as you promised." The 2 men ran. They found that window, they saw the scarlet cord, and they went inside. They brought out Rahab, her father, her mother, her brothers, her sisters, everyone she had gathered under that roof. Not one of them was harmed. The city burned, the walls were rubble, Jericho was consumed, but Rahab and every person she loved stood alive, untouched, outside the camp of Israel. Every single life she had sheltered beneath that scarlet cord, saved, just like the promise said.
But here is where the story goes from amazing to extraordinary. Rahab didn't just survive Jericho. She was received into Israel. She came to live among God's people, not as a prisoner, not as a servant, as a member of the community. A woman with a complicated past, welcomed in, given a place, given a future. And then, in what can only be the grace of God on full display, she married a man of Israel, and she became the mother of a son. His name was Boaz. Boaz, who would one day show extraordinary kindness to a young widow from Moab named Ruth, who became his wife, whose great-grandson would become the greatest king Israel ever knew. His name was David. And from David's line, centuries later, would come the one the whole story had always been pointing toward. Rahab, the woman of Jericho, the woman the world had written off, was written into the genealogy of Jesus Christ, listed by name in the very first chapter of the Gospel of Matthew, right alongside Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. A Canaanite woman with a scarlet cord in the most sacred family tree in all of human history. Only God writes a story like that. In Hebrews, the great roll call of faith, you find Abraham, Moses, Noah, Gideon, David, and then Rahab, named among them as an equal. By faith, Rahab did not perish with those who were disobedient because she welcomed the spies. Her faith was real, and it was counted. In James, she stands right beside Abraham as an example of faith that doesn't just speak, faith that acts, faith that hides spies and ties a cord in a window and gathers every person she loves into the space of a promise. That scarlet cord she hung in her window? Theologians across the centuries have seen something deeper in it, a small thread of red hanging in the dark over a city under judgment, and everyone beneath its promise saved. A picture, many have said, of the blood of Christ, ordinary in appearance, unimaginable in power, the thing that separates those who are saved from those who are not. Rahab's story reaches across thousands of years and says something directly to you right now. God does not choose the way we choose. He does not require a perfect past. He is not looking for a spotless record or an impressive reputation. He is looking for a heart that dares to believe and hands willing to act on that belief before all the evidence is in. Rahab heard stories about a God she had never met, and she decided, alone in the quiet of her own heart, those stories are true. Before the walls fell, before the army marched, before she had a single piece of proof she would survive. She chose faith, and she hung that cord in her window as a declaration, I am trusting in this. I am on the side of this God, whatever happens. Maybe you are in your own version of Jericho today. Maybe the walls feel permanent, the situation feels unconquerable. Maybe your past follows you like a label you never chose, and grace feels like something meant for people with cleaner hands than yours.
Rahab's God is still the same God. The God who stopped a river, who brought down walls with a shout, who reached into a condemned city and saved one woman and everyone she loved. He did not require her to be perfect before he included her. He required her to believe. And in believing, she became part of a story far greater than anything she could have written for herself. The God who brings down walls does not hesitate to save a single soul, not even yours. Thank you so much for watching all the way through this incredible story. If Rahab's faith moved you today, if you found yourself in her courage, in her willingness to believe before she could see, please give this video a thumbs up and subscribe to this channel. We tell these stories because we believe they matter. Every single one of these ancient lives has something powerful to say to you right here, right now. And speaking of powerful stories, next time we are covering another woman whose faith and loyalty changed the course of history.
a widowed foreigner who chose love, obedience, and sacrifice, and through her faithfulness became part of God's divine plan and the bloodline of kings. Her name was Ruth, and trust me, you do not want to miss it. Until then, be strong, be faithful, and never underestimate what God can do with a heart that chooses to believe. See you in the next one. A woman who had every reason to walk away and chose to stay. A woman nobody expected anything from, a foreigner, a widow, an outsider, and yet, somehow, God chose her to be part of the most important family line in all of human history. This is the story of Ruth. And I promise you, by the time we get to the end of this video, you're going to see your own life differently. Because Ruth's story isn't just ancient history, it's a mirror. And what it shows us about loyalty, about God's timing, and about how He can flip your whole life around when you least expect it, it's nothing short of breathtaking. Let's go back, way back, about 3,000 years ago. Imagine living in a land where there's no food. Not like, oh, we're out of groceries kind of no food. I mean nothing. Fields dry and cracked, animals dying, children crying with empty stomachs. That's the kind of famine that hit the land of Judah, specifically a little town called Bethlehem. Now, here's something kind of ironic and a little heartbreaking. Bethlehem literally means house of bread. Can you imagine? The town literally named House of Bread had no bread. So a man named Elimelech made a desperate decision. He packed up his wife Naomi and their 2 sons, Mahlon and Chilion, and left everything they'd ever known. Their home, their community, their identity, everything. They crossed the Jordan River and headed into a foreign land called Moab. Now, I need you to understand, this was a big deal. Moab wasn't just a neighboring country. The Moabites and Israelites had a complicated, painful history. They were technically distant relatives, both descended from Abraham's family, but the Moabites had refused to help Israel during one of their darkest moments. There was real tension there, real history, real prejudice on both sides. But when you're starving, you go where there's food. Pride becomes a luxury you can no longer afford. So this little Hebrew family, refugees really, settled in Moab and tried to build a new life. And for a while, it actually worked. Mahlon and Chilion grew up, fell in love, and married 2 Moabite women. One married a girl named Orpah. The other married a young woman named Ruth. For 10 years, life was good. They had a home, they had family dinners, they had laughter. Naomi had daughters-in-law who called her mom. She watched her boys become men. Life felt settled. But then everything fell apart. First, Elimelech died. Just like that. The man of the house, gone. Naomi became a widow in a foreign country, but she still had her sons. They'd take care of her. She told herself she'd be okay. But then both of her sons died too. There's a pause. The Bible doesn't explain how. It doesn't give us a disease or an accident or a cause. It just says they died. And honestly, I think that's intentional because grief doesn't always come with an explanation. Sometimes life just takes people from you and you're left standing there asking why with no good answer. So now you have 3 women, Naomi, Ruth, and Orpah, all widows, all in a foreign land, all with no income, no sons, no husbands, and no safety net. In that ancient world, a woman without a husband or son to protect her was in serious trouble. We're talking poverty. We're talking danger. We're talking the kind of vulnerability that could swallow you whole. This is where our story really begins. Naomi got word from home. The famine in Judah was over. There was food in Bethlehem again. God had come through for his people. So Naomi made her decision. She was going home. She'd left as a wife and mother. She'd be returning as a widow with nothing, but at least Bethlehem was her people, her land, her God. She kissed Ruth and Orpah goodbye and told them, "Go back to your mothers, go back to your families. You're young, you're beautiful, you deserve a chance to start over, find new husbands, have children, build a life. You've been good to my sons. You've been good to me. Now go, be free." Can you imagine that? This woman had just lost her husband and both her sons. The only family she had left were these two young women, and she was sending them away because she loved them so much she wanted better for them than what she could offer. Both Ruth and Orpah started crying. They said, "No, we're coming with you." But Naomi kept insisting. She said something so honest, it hurts. "I have nothing to give you. I have no more sons for you to marry. I can't fix this. I can't rescue you. Even if I got married tonight, and I'm not, you'd have to wait decades for children to grow up. No, go home. I'm bitter. God's hand has turned against me. You don't want to be part of this story." That last part, God's hand has turned against me, that's a woman who has been crushed. That's not just sadness. That's the kind of grief that shakes your faith. The kind where you start wondering if God even sees you or if he's forgotten you entirely. Orpah, crying, kissed her mother-in-law goodbye and walked back toward Moab. And I don't want you to judge Orpah. Please don't. She made the sensible choice, the smart choice. She was going home to her family, where she belonged, where she could rebuild. That's not wrong. That's wisdom. But Ruth didn't move. Naomi looked at her and said, "Look, your sister-in-law went back to her people and her gods. Go with her." One last push, one final out. And this is the moment. This is the moment that everything turns on. Because Ruth opened her mouth and said something so powerful, so raw, so real, that people are still quoting it 3,000 years later. "Don't ask me to leave you. Don't tell me to go back, because wherever you go, I will go. Wherever you stay, I will stay. Your people will be my people. Your God will be my God. Where you die, I will die. And I want to be buried right there beside you. I'm making a vow before God right now. Not even death is going to separate me from you." Y'all, she didn't have to do this. She had nothing to gain from following Naomi. No promise of money, no promise of a new husband, no promise of comfort. She was choosing uncertainty. She was choosing hardship. She was choosing to leave her homeland, her family, her culture, her gods, and follow an old, broken, bitter woman into a land that might not even want her. But she did it anyway. Because that's what love looks like when it's real. When Naomi heard those words, she stopped arguing. Some things are bigger than logic. Some things you just have to accept with tears and silence. So together, the two women walked, just the two of them, all the way to Bethlehem. When Naomi and Ruth walked into Bethlehem, word spread fast. It was like a small town, and a small town always has eyes. Women came out and said, "Wait, is that Naomi?" And Naomi, who hadn't lost her sharp tongue even in grief, said, "Don't call me Naomi anymore. Call me Mara." Naomi means pleasant. Mara means bitter. She said, "I went away full. I'm coming back empty. God did this to me." Standing right next to her was Ruth. Ruth, who had given up everything for her, and Naomi called herself empty. Grief is like that sometimes. It blinds you to the gifts standing right in front of you. But the timing of their arrival was not an accident. They rolled into Bethlehem just as the barley harvest was beginning. And in Israel, the harvest season was the one time when poor people, widows, foreigners, the homeless, had a legal right to walk behind the harvesters and pick up whatever grain fell on the ground. It was called gleaning. It was basically God's built-in welfare system, written right into the law. Ruth woke up the next morning, looked at Naomi, and said, "Let me go out to the fields and glean. Somebody will be kind enough to let me work." She didn't sit around feeling sorry for herself. She didn't wait for someone to rescue her. She got up and went to work. That alone tells you everything about who Ruth was. Now here's where the story starts getting good. Ruth went out to find a field, and as it happened, she ended up in a field that belonged to a man named Boaz. As it happened, that's the Bible's way of winking at you, because in a story about God's providence, there are no coincidences. Ruth didn't randomly stumble into that field. She was guided there. She just didn't know it yet. So who is Boaz? The Bible describes him as a man of great worth, wealthy, respected, honorable. And here's the detail that makes this whole thing click. He was a relative of Naomi's late husband, Elimelech, which means he was family. Distant, maybe, but family. That morning, Boaz came out to check on his workers, and the first thing he said to them was, "The Lord be with you." And they responded, "The Lord bless you." This wasn't just a formality. This was a man who actually walked with God, who built an atmosphere of faith in his workplace. In a time when corruption and wickedness were everywhere, remember, this was the era of the judges, when everyone did what was right in their own eyes, Boaz was different. And then he noticed her. He asked his foreman, "Who's that young woman?" And the foreman told him everything. She's Moabite, she came back with Naomi, she asked politely to glean, she's been working since early this morning and hasn't stopped except for a short break. Boaz walked straight over to her, and what he said next absolutely floors me every time. He didn't ask her to leave. He didn't treat her like an outsider. He said, "Listen to me, my daughter. Don't go gleaning in anyone else's field. Stay here. Follow my workers. I've already told the men not to bother you, and when you're thirsty, help yourself to our water." In that time, foreign women working in fields were vulnerable. They had no protection. They could be harassed, threatened, taken advantage of. The fact that Boaz went out of his way to say, "Nobody touches her, nobody messes with her, she's under my protection," that's not just kindness. That's a man with character. That's a man who sees people when the rest of the world sees outsiders. She fell to the ground in shock. "Why are you being so kind to me? I'm a foreigner. You don't even know me." And Boaz said, "Oh, but I do know you. I've heard everything. I know how you left your family and your homeland to come with Naomi after she lost everything. I know about your loyalty. I know about your courage. What you've done, that's not ordinary. That's faith. And may God reward you for it, because you've come to take refuge under His wings." She came looking for leftover grain, and she found a man who saw her true worth. At lunchtime, Boaz called her over to eat with his workers, not behind them, not after them, with them. He served her himself. He made sure she had more than enough. And when she went back to work, he quietly told his workers, "Leave extra grain on purpose. Let her find it. Don't embarrass her. Just make sure she goes home with plenty." That evening, Ruth came home with about 30 pounds of barley. That's not normal for a gleaner. That's not even close to normal. Naomi's eyes went wide. "Where did you work today? Whoever's field that was, God bless him." Ruth said, "His name is Boaz." Naomi went still. "Boaz, the Lord has not forgotten us. That man is our close relative. He is one of our guardian redeemers." Now that phrase, guardian redeemer, is going to become the most important phrase in this whole story. So let me explain it.
In ancient Israel, there was a role called the Goel, the kinsman redeemer. If a man died and left his family in poverty, a close male relative had the right and the duty to step in, buy back the family land, protect the widow, and in some cases, marry the widow to continue the dead man's family name. It was God's way of making sure families didn't just disappear into poverty and obscurity.
Boaz was that relative for Naomi and Ruth. And suddenly, what looked like a random Tuesday in a random field was actually God quietly setting up the next chapter.
Before we continue, don't forget to like the video and subscribe so you never miss our next Bible story. And if you did like access to the character prompts that keep every scene and character consistent, simply scan the QR code or check the link in the description. Now, let's get back to our story, because the best is reserved for last.
The harvest season ended after about 7 weeks. Ruth had worked faithfully every single day, and now Naomi, who had been watching everything unfold with new eyes that were starting to see God's hand again after so long, came to Ruth with a plan. She said, "Ruth, I need to find you a home, a real home, and I think God has been setting something up this whole time. Tonight, Boaz is going to be at the threshing floor separating the grain. I want you to wash up, put on your best clothes, put on some perfume, basically look your best. Go down there after he's eaten, find where he lies down to sleep, uncover his feet and lie down there. He'll know what to do." Okay, I know this sounds really strange to us, but hear me out, because in that culture, this was actually a formal way for a woman to propose. Uncovering a man's feet and lying at them was a symbolic request. It was her saying, "I'm asking you to be my covering, my protector, my husband." It was vulnerable, it was bold, and it was completely proper for that time. Ruth didn't hesitate. She said, "Whatever you say, I'll do it." And she went. She waited in the darkness at the edge of the threshing floor while Boaz ate and celebrated with his workers. She watched him lie down beside the pile of grain to guard it through the night. She waited until he was deeply asleep, and then, quietly, carefully, she uncovered his feet and lay down. Can you imagine the courage that took? She was putting herself in an incredibly vulnerable position. She was risking rejection. She was risking public humiliation. She was a foreign widow with nothing, and she was going to this wealthy, respected man in the middle of the night and essentially saying, "I'm asking for your name." In the dark of the night, something woke Boaz up. He reached down and felt someone lying at his feet. His heart probably jumped. Who are you?" And Ruth answered in the darkness, simply and powerfully, "I am Ruth, your servant. Spread the quarter of your garment over me. You are my guardian redeemer." In that moment, those words, "Spread your garment over me," echoed back to something Boaz himself had prayed over her earlier. When he first met her in the field, he had said, "May God reward you because you've come to shelter under his wings." And now she was asking him to be the expression of those wings, to be the hands and feet of God's protection in her life. Boaz responded with grace. He said, "God bless you, my daughter. What you're doing right now, is an even greater act of kindness than everything you did for Naomi. You could have chased after any young man, rich or poor, but you didn't. You're a woman of noble character. Everybody in this town knows it. Don't be afraid. I will do what you're asking." But then, and here's the complication, he said there was a problem. "There is someone more closely related to your family than I am. He has the first right to be your guardian redeemer. I can't just skip over him. I have to do this properly by the law. But I promise you, if he won't do it, then I will. I swear it before God." He sent her home before dawn with 6 large measures of barley because he said, "I don't want you going back to your mother-in-law empty-handed." When Ruth got home and told Naomi everything, Naomi smiled for maybe the first time in years. She said, "Wait, my daughter, just wait. That man will not rest until this is settled today." That morning, Boaz went to the city gate. In the ancient world, the gate was basically the courthouse, the town square, and the signing table all in one. It was where legal matters were settled, where witnesses gathered, where agreements were made official. He sat down and waited, and before long, the other relative came walking through, the man who had the first right to redeem Naomi's family property. Boaz called to him, "Hey, come sit with me." He gathered 10 elders of the city to serve as witnesses because this was going to be a legal transaction, and laid it all out. "You know the land that belonged to Elimelech, Naomi's late husband. She's back and needs to sell it. As the closest relative, you have the first right to buy it back. Do you want it?" The man's eyes lit up. "Yes, I'll redeem it." But then Boaz said slowly and clearly, "There's something else. On the day you buy that land, you also take on the responsibility of Ruth the Moabite, Mahlon's widow. You marry her, you provide for her, and any children you have with her will carry her first husband's name, not yours." The man's face changed. He said, and you can hear the calculating in his voice, "I cannot redeem it because it would put my own estate at risk." He wanted the land. He didn't want the people that came with it. He wanted the asset, not the responsibility.
And so, according to the ancient custom, he pulled off his sandal and handed it to Boaz. That was the legal sign. The transfer was complete. The right of redemption passed from him to Boaz. And in front of all 10 elders and everyone gathered at the gate, Boaz stood up and declared, "Today you are all witnesses. I have purchased the land and property of Elimelech, Kilion, and Mahlon, and I have taken Ruth the Moabite as my wife to carry on the name of her late husband, to make sure that name is never forgotten." The people erupted. The elders blessed them. "May God make this woman in your home like Rachel and Leah, who built the whole house of Israel. May you be famous in Bethlehem. May your family be like the family of Perez." They didn't know, they couldn't know just how literally that blessing was about to come true. And so Boaz and Ruth were married. Ruth, who had been a widow with nothing, was now a bride. Ruth, who had left everything in Moab, now had a home. Ruth, who had been an outsider, was now family. And God, who had been working quietly behind every single scene of this story, did one more thing. He opened Ruth's womb, and she gave birth to a son. The women of Bethlehem gathered around Naomi, the woman who had called herself empty, the woman who had called herself bitter, the woman who had told God, "Your hand is against me," and they said, "Praise God, He has not left you without a guardian redeemer. This baby is going to renew your life. He's going to take care of you in your old age. And do you know what? Your daughter-in-law, the one who loves you, she has given birth to him, and she is worth more to you than 7 sons." 7 sons. In that culture, 7 sons was basically the greatest blessing a woman could receive, and they said Ruth was worth more than that. Naomi took that little baby in her arms, her grandson really, the child of the daughter who chose her, and held him close to her chest. The woman who came back empty was full again. The boy's name was Obed. And here's where it gets bigger than just one family's happy ending. The book of Ruth closes with a genealogy, a list of names. And at first it seems like a strange way to end such a beautiful story with a bunch of names you can barely pronounce. But stick with me, because this genealogy is the whole point. It goes like this. Boaz was the father of Obed. Obed was the father of Jesse. Jesse was the father of David. King David, the greatest king in Israel's history, the warrior poet, the man after God's own heart, the one who wrote the Psalms, the one who unified Israel. That David came directly from Ruth, a foreign woman, a widow, an outsider from Moab, the one nobody would have expected to be in the story at all. But that's still not the end, because if you open the New Testament and flip to the very first chapter of Matthew, the family tree of Jesus Christ, you'll find Ruth's name right there in verse 5.
Salmon, the father of Boaz, whose mother was Rahab. Boaz, the father of Obed, whose mother was Ruth. Ruth, the loyal Moabite, the woman who made a covenant out of love and walked away from everything safe and familiar. She is listed in the bloodline of Jesus himself. Let that sink in for just a second. She had no idea. She just knew she loved Naomi and couldn't leave her. She just knew she wanted to follow Naomi's God, this God she'd only heard about through her husband and his family. She just knew she'd rather face an uncertain future with integrity than a comfortable future without it. And God took that small, faithful choice and wove it into the most important story ever told. What is Ruth's story saying to you? So what does all of this mean for us, sitting here thousands of years later? I think Ruth's story is saying at least 4 really important things. First, your small choices matter more than you know. Ruth had no idea what she was doing. She wasn't thinking, I'm going to be the great-grandmother of King David and an ancestor of Jesus. She was just thinking, I love this woman. I can't leave her alone. The small, quiet choice to stay, to be loyal, to show up, that's what God uses. You never know which conversation, which act of kindness, which moment of faithfulness is the one that God is going to use to change someone's life forever, maybe even your own. Second, God has no outsiders. Ruth was a Moabite. She came from a people who had history with Israel. She had no legal right to be there. She was an outsider in every possible sense. And yet God chose her, wrote her into his story, welcomed her under his wings. If you've ever felt like you don't belong, like you're too far gone, too different, too broken, too much of an outsider for God to use, Ruth is your answer. There are no outsiders in God's family, only people who haven't yet come home. Third, faithfulness will be seen. Ruth didn't go around advertising what she did for Naomi. She just did it. She got up every morning, she worked, she was loyal, she was kind, and somehow, before she ever even met Boaz, he already knew her reputation. I've been told everything you've done. Your character is speaking, even when you're not in the room. Fourth, God is always working even when you feel empty. Naomi came home calling herself bitter. She thought God had forgotten her. She felt empty. But looking back at the story, we can see that God was at work in every single scene, every step she couldn't see, every door that opened, every coincidence that wasn't a coincidence at all. If you're in a season of feeling like Naomi right now, empty, bitter, wondering if God even notices you, he does. He is working in the scenes you cannot see. He is setting up your Boaz. He is timing your harvest. He is writing your next chapter even while you're still crying over the last one.
Ruth was just a girl from Moab, a widow, a nobody by the world's standards. She made one faithful choice, one, and God did the rest. He redeemed her. He restored Naomi. He gave them both more than they had dared to hope for. And through their story, he quietly moved history forward toward the greatest redemption of all time. Maybe you're at your own crossroads today. Maybe, like Ruth, you're choosing between what's easy and what's faithful. Maybe, like Naomi, you're calling yourself empty and wondering if this is just how life ends for you. Maybe, like Boaz, you're in a position to show extraordinary kindness to someone who desperately needs it, and you've been hesitating. Ruth's story is your permission to stay, to love, to serve, to work, to trust. Because the God who guided Ruth's feet to the right field is the same God who is with you today, and he wastes nothing, not your pain, not your grief, not your loss, not your story. He is a redeemer, and redemption is exactly what he does best. If this story moved you, if it encouraged you, if it gave you hope, please hit that like button and subscribe if you haven't already. Every time you share a video like this, you might be handing someone else the exact story they needed to hear today. So share it. Send it to someone who needs a reminder that God hasn't forgotten them. We tell ancient stories because they carry modern truths. And these truths, they save lives. Next story preview. Next time, we're going to uncover the story of a woman whose beauty caught the eye of a king and whose life became entangled in one of the most shocking scandals in the entire Bible. That's right, we're telling the story of Bathsheba. And trust me, it's not the simple story you may think you know. The real story of Bathsheba is one of power, betrayal, loss, and redemption. A story that exposes the dangerous consequences of desire, the weight of hidden sin, and how God can still bring purpose out of brokenness. Because at its core, Bathsheba's story isn't just about a king's mistake. It's about a woman caught in the middle of choices that changed the course of history forever. You do not want to miss it. I'll see you in the next one.
I want you to imagine something with me. Imagine you're just living your life. You're not doing anything wrong. You're not trying to get anyone's attention. You're just living, washing up in the evening the way you do every single day. And then, without you even knowing it, someone is watching you. That someone has more power than almost anyone else on earth. And that one evening changes the entire rest of your life. That's not a movie plot, friend. That is a real story. It happened thousands of years ago, and it's written in the Bible, in the book of Samuel. And today, we're going to walk through it together, slowly, gently, honestly, because this woman deserves that. Her name was Bathsheba, and for a long, long time, people only told half of her story. They told the part about the king, the scandal, the sin, but they left out the part about who she really was, a woman who lost, a woman who grieved, a woman who rose again and became one of the most powerful mothers in the entire Bible. So today, we tell the whole story, not just the sad parts, not just the scandal, but the whole journey, from a rooftop in Jerusalem all the way to a golden throne. Stay with me till the end because trust me, friend, the ending is going to surprise you. Let's begin. Long ago, in a city called Jerusalem, there lived a king named David. Now, if you know anything about David, you know he wasn't always a king. He started out just as a shepherd boy. A boy who took care of sheep on the hills all by himself with nothing but a sling and a few stones. But that same boy grew up, and one day he stood in front of a giant named Goliath, and he won. From that day, David's whole life changed. He became a soldier, then a general, then finally a king. By the time our story begins, David was no longer that young shepherd boy. He was a grown man, sitting on the throne of an entire nation. His armies were strong. His name was known everywhere. People sang songs about him in the streets. But here's something important, friend, something the Bible tells us very plainly. It was the season when kings were supposed to go to war. That's right. Every year when the weather turned, the kings of that land would lead their armies out to battle. That was simply what a king did. But this year, David didn't go. He sent his commander, a man named Joab, to lead the army instead. And David, he stayed home, in the palace, comfortable, safe, with nothing much to do. Now, that might not sound like a big deal to you, friend, but think about it for a second. David was a man who had spent his whole life being busy, running from enemies as a young man, fighting battles, leading soldiers. He was used to having a purpose, a job to do, every single day. But this year, he had nothing to do but rest. And friend, that is exactly where our story takes a turn. One evening, as the sun was going down and the sky was turning orange over the rooftops of Jerusalem, David got up from his bed. He walked out onto the roof of his palace to get some air. From way up there, high above the city, he could see almost everything. And that's when he saw her, a woman bathing on her rooftop, the way people did back then in the evenings. The Bible tells us she was very beautiful. Now listen closely, friend, because this part matters so much. This woman was not doing anything wrong. She wasn't trying to be seen. She didn't know the king was watching. She was just living her ordinary evening the same she did every single day of her life. But David saw her, and instead of looking away, he asked one of his servants, "Who is that woman?" The answer came back fast. Her name was Bathsheba. She was the daughter of a man named Eliam, and she was already married to a soldier named Uriah. Uriah was a Hittite, which means he wasn't even originally from Israel, but he had joined David's army and fought loyally for the king for years. So David was told very clearly in one single sentence, her name, her father, and her husband. He knew she was married, and he sent for her anyway. Now, here's something you need to understand about the ancient world, friend. Something that's really different from today. When a king sent for you back then, you didn't get to say no. There was no phone call you could ignore, no message you could politely decline. If the most powerful man in the entire kingdom sent soldiers to your door and said, "The king wants to see you," you went. You didn't have an army to protect you. You didn't have a vote. You didn't have any power at all. So when messengers came to Bathsheba's home and told her the king wanted her brought to the palace, what choice did she really have? She was brought to the palace, and while her husband was away fighting a war for that very king, David was with her. And then, just like that, she was sent back home. Bathsheba went home, back to her empty house. Her husband, Uriah, was far away, still fighting on the battlefield, still being loyal to a king who had just done something terrible behind his back. And then the days passed, and Bathsheba realized something that filled her with fear. Can you imagine, friend, the fear in her heart in that moment? Her husband had been gone. Everyone would know something was wrong. In that culture at that time, this could have gotten her killed. Truly, this was not a small problem. This was the biggest danger of her entire life. So she did the only thing she could do. She sent a message to the palace, just 3 words in her language, 3 words that carried the weight of her whole world. "I am pregnant." And with those 3 words, everything that happened next was set into motion. But friend, I need you to understand something important here. What happened next was not her fault. It was not her doing. She would simply have to live with the consequences for the rest of her life. When David got Bathsheba's message, he had a choice in front of him. He could have told the truth. He could have said, "I did something wrong and I need to make it right." He could have gone to God and said, "I'm sorry," but he didn't. Instead, he tried to hide it. David sent word to the battlefield, calling for Uriah to come home to Jerusalem. His plan was simple and honestly a little sneaky. If Uriah came home and spent a night with his wife, everyone would just assume the baby was his. No questions, no danger, problem solved, right? Uriah arrived in Jerusalem. David greeted him warmly, asked him how the battle was going, how the soldiers were holding up, how his commander Joab was doing. Then he told Uriah to go home, relax, and enjoy some time with his wife. But Uriah didn't go home. Instead, he slept outside at the entrance of the palace with the other guards and servants. When David found out, he was confused. He asked Uriah, "Why didn't you go home?" And Uriah gave an answer that honestly should make all of us stop and think for a second. He said something like this, My commander and the soldiers of Israel are out in open fields right now, sleeping on the ground. The Ark of the Covenant is out there too. How could I go home, eat a nice meal, and lie comfortably with my wife while they are suffering out there? I could never do that." Friend, in that one single moment, without even meaning to, a humble soldier from a foreign land showed more honor and integrity than the king of Israel himself. David tried again the next night. He invited Uriah to dinner, made sure the wine kept flowing, hoping that maybe if Uriah got a little drunk, he would finally go home. But even then, Uriah still would not go inside his own house. His loyalty simply would not let him. And so David's plan had failed. The secret wasn't going to hide itself that easily. Friend, I want you to notice something here. David had a chance, 2 whole chances, to just stop, to tell the truth, to ask for forgiveness before things got even worse. But instead, he kept digging deeper and deeper into his own mistake. So David did something far, far worse. He wrote a letter that would seal Uriah's fate. He sent it straight to his commander out on the battlefield, and he had Uriah carry that letter himself without knowing what was written inside. Can you imagine that, friend? Uriah carried his own death sentence in his own hands, and he didn't even know it. The letter told Joab to put Uriah on the front line where the fighting was the fiercest, and then to suddenly pull the other soldiers back, leaving Uriah alone and exposed. And that is exactly what happened. In the middle of the battle, Uriah the Hittite fell. He died, defending a kingdom whose king had just betrayed him in the worst possible way.
When the news reached Bathsheba that her husband was dead, she mourned. The Bible tells us this simply, but it means so much. Whatever their marriage had been like, whatever their story was, Uriah was her husband, and now he was gone. He died far away, on a battlefield, never knowing the real reason why. She grieved for him the way anyone grieves the person they've lost. And when the time of mourning finally ended, David sent for her again and brought her into the palace to become his wife. She had a son. The palace doors closed behind her, and inside those walls, Bathsheba now had to find a way to keep living, carrying grief and fear and uncertainty all at the very same time. But friend, here's where the story takes a turn that changes everything. The Bible adds one small sentence right here, a sentence that might be easy to miss, but it is so important. The thing David had done displeased the Lord. God had been watching this entire time, every moment on that rooftop, every part of the cover-up, every word in that terrible letter. God saw all of it. And he was not finished with this story, not even close.
Before we continue, don't forget to like the video and subscribe so you never miss our next Bible story. And if you did like access to the character prompts that keep every scene and character consistent, simply scan the QR code or check the link in the description. Now, let's get back to our story, because the best is reserved for last.
God sent a prophet named Nathan to go and speak to King David. Now, Nathan didn't walk in and shout at the king. Instead, he told him a story. He said there once was a rich man with huge flocks of sheep and cattle, more than he could ever need. And there was a poor man who had just one little lamb. That lamb was like a member of his family. It ate from his plate. It slept in his arms. He loved it like a daughter. One day, a traveler came to visit the rich man's house, but instead of taking one of his own many sheep to feed his guest, the rich man took the poor man's one little lamb. He killed it, and he served it for dinner.
When David heard this story, he was furious. He said the man who did that deserved to die and that he should pay back 4 times what he took. And then Nathan looked David straight in the eyes and said 4 words that must have hit like thunder. "You are that man." Can you imagine that moment? The king who thought he had gotten away with everything, suddenly realizing that God had seen it all along. Nathan told David the truth, plainly. You were given everything a man could want, and still you took what wasn't yours. You had a loyal, honest man killed, and you took his wife for yourself. David didn't argue. He didn't make excuses. He simply said, "I have sinned against the Lord." And Nathan told him that God had forgiven his sin. He would not die for what he'd done. But then came the hardest part. The baby, the son that had been born, would not survive. The child became very sick. David fasted. He wept. He lay on the ground for 7 days straight, begging God to let the little boy live. But on the 7th day, the baby died. I want us to slow down right here, friend, because this is one of the most painful parts of Bathsheba's whole story. She had already lost her husband. Now she lost her baby too. A baby she had carried inside her, a baby she loved from the very moment she knew he was coming. Gone. The Bible doesn't write down her words in this moment. We don't get to read her cries or her prayers or the questions she must have asked God in the middle of the night. But friend, we don't need the exact words to know how much this hurt. She was a mother who lost her child, and nothing makes that pain small. But then something happened that surprised everyone in the palace. David got up off the ground, he washed himself, he changed his clothes, he went to worship God, and then he asked for food. His servants were shocked. They said, "You fasted and cried while the baby was alive, but now that he's gone, you get up and eat?" And David gave an answer that still teaches people something powerful today. He said, "While the child was alive, I fasted, hoping God might be gracious and let him live. But now that he's gone, crying won't bring him back. One day I will go to him, but he cannot come back to me." And then David went to comfort Bathsheba. And not long after, Bathsheba became pregnant again. She gave birth to a son. They named him Solomon. And the Bible tells us something beautiful right here, friend, something that still gives me chills. God loved this child. He sent word through the prophet Nathan, giving the baby a second name, Jedediah, which means beloved of the Lord. Out of the darkest, saddest season of both their lives, God gave them a baby marked by his love. Bathsheba held that little boy in her arms, and for the first time in a very long time, she must have felt something other than grief. She must have felt hope.
Years passed. Solomon grew from a baby into a young man, but the palace around him grew more and more dangerous. King David was getting old now, and in his final years, the household was full of conflict, just like the prophet Nathan had once warned. One of David's older sons even led a rebellion against his own father. As David got older and weaker, everyone in the kingdom started asking the same big question: who is going to be the next king? David had many sons, and one of them, a son named Adonijah, decided not to wait for an answer. He declared himself the next king. He gathered followers, he threw a big celebration feast, acting like the throne was already his. But there was a problem. David had made a promise a long time ago to Bathsheba that her son, Solomon, would be the one to rule after him. When Bathsheba heard what Adonijah had done, she didn't panic. She didn't sit back and wait for someone else to fix it. She stood up and she acted. She went straight to King David. She walked into his room and bowed before him, and she calmly, clearly laid out exactly what was happening. She reminded him of the promise he had made. She told him that if this wasn't fixed right away, she and her son Solomon could both be in terrible danger the moment David was gone. David listened to every word. He called for the prophet Nathan, a priest named Zadok, and a commander named Benaiah, and he gave a clear command. Take Solomon, anoint him as king over Israel right now. Let the trumpets ring out, let the people shout, "Long live King Solomon!" And that is exactly what happened. Trumpets rang out across Jerusalem. The whole city erupted in celebration, so loud that it said the very ground shook with the noise of it. Over at Adonijah's feast, the music and laughter suddenly stopped because everyone there understood exactly what that sound meant. Solomon was king now, and Bathsheba was the one who made it happen, not with an army, not with tricks or lies, but with the simple, powerful courage to walk into a room and tell the truth. When Solomon officially became king, something remarkable happened, something that had probably never happened quite like this before. Solomon was now the most powerful man in the entire nation. He would go on to become known as one of the wisest men who ever lived, so wise that rulers from other countries traveled far and wide just to hear him speak. And when his mother walked into the room, Solomon stood up from his throne. He bowed to her. He had a second throne brought in and placed right beside his own, at his right hand, the highest position of honor in the entire kingdom. And there she sat, Bathsheba, honored, respected, listened to. The same woman who had once been a young girl on a rooftop being watched without her knowledge was now seated in the place of highest honor beside the King of Israel. Everything that had been done to her did not define her. Everything she had lost did not finish her, friend. The grief, the fear, the years of surviving inside a dangerous palace, it didn't break her. It shaped her. It built inside her a wisdom and a strength that could never have come any other way. And here's something amazing. Many Bible scholars believe that the famous words of wisdom found in the book of Proverbs, chapter 31, the ones a mother taught her son about being a good king, about choosing honesty, about caring for the poor and speaking up for people who have no voice, many believe those words belonged to Bathsheba. A mother's voice, still teaching, still guiding, written right into the Bible for the whole world to read forever. Think about that for a moment, friend. The very same woman who was once talked about only in whispers, only in connection to a king's mistake, became the woman whose words may have shaped the wisest book ever written. Her voice didn't disappear. It grew louder across thousands of years, still speaking to us today. Bathsheba's story is one of the hardest, most complicated stories in the whole Bible. For a very long time, people only talked about her in connection to what David did to her. Her own feelings, her own faith, her own incredible strength were often left out completely, like she was just a small part of someone else's story. But friend, God never saw her that way. He gave her a son marked by his own love. He gave her a seat of honor beside a throne, and he wrote her name into one of the most important family lines in all of history, the ancestors of Jesus himself. In the Gospel of Matthew, right there in the very first chapter, her name is remembered among the mothers who came before Jesus. Not erased, not forgotten, not defined by the worst thing that ever happened to her. Remembered, honored, redeemed. There is something in Bathsheba's story for every single person listening right now who has ever been pulled into pain they didn't cause. Every person who has grieved a loss that wasn't their fault. Every person who has had to rebuild their whole life inside walls they never chose to walk into. If that's you today, friend, I want you to hear this clearly. God sees you. Not the way the world sees you, not through the eyes of the people who hurt you or ignored you or reduced you down to just one bad moment in your life. He sees your whole story. He sees the parts you're proud of and the parts you wish had never happened. He sees the nights you cried alone and the mornings you got up anyway, even when it felt impossible. And He is not finished writing it. Bathsheba didn't ask for the story she was given, but she walked through every single chapter of it with a quiet dignity that still speaks thousands of years later. She grieved without letting it destroy her. She endured without becoming bitter. She built a beautiful life in the space she was given, and she raised a son the whole world still quotes to this very day. And in the end, she sat beside a throne that she helped build. Not through cruelty, not through revenge, through courage. So friend, if your life has been shaped by something someone else did to you, if you're carrying a grief you never asked for, if you've had to build a life out of pieces you never chose, I hope Bathsheba's story reminds you of this one simple truth. What was taken from you is not the end of your story. Thank you so much for walking through this story with me today. If it touched your heart, please don't forget to like this video and subscribe so you never miss the next one. Because friend, we are just getting started. Until then, take care of yourself, friend, and remember, your story isn't over yet either. In a small, dusty town that almost nobody had heard of, God was about to do something so big, so wonderful, that people would still be talking about it thousands of years later. This is the story of Mary, the young girl God chose to be the mother of Jesus. Long ago, in a little town called Nazareth, there lived a young girl named Mary. She was probably a teenager, maybe around 14 or 15 years old. She wasn't rich, she wasn't famous, she was just an ordinary girl who loved God with her whole heart. Nazareth wasn't a grand city. It was small, quiet, and easy to overlook. In fact, some people back then didn't think anything good could ever come from a place like Nazareth. It had dusty streets, small stone houses, and simple, hard-working families who farmed the land or worked with their hands. Nobody important ever seemed to come from there. And yet, this is exactly the place God chose for His biggest surprise. Mary was engaged to a kind, hard-working carpenter named Joseph. Back then, being engaged was a serious promise, almost like being married already, even though they hadn't had their wedding yet. Mary probably spent her days helping around the house, drawing water from the well, weaving cloth, and dreaming about the simple life she and Joseph would build together. Maybe she imagined a cozy little home, children running around, and quiet evenings after a long day of work. She had no idea that her whole world was about to change forever. One ordinary day, something extraordinary happened. An angel named Gabriel suddenly appeared right in front of her. Not in a dream, not in her imagination, right there in real life. Mary was terrified. Her heart must have been pounding so hard. Who wouldn't be scared if a shining angel just appeared out of nowhere? "Greetings, favored one," Gabriel said. "The Lord is with you." Mary froze. She had no idea what to make of these words. Why would an angel come to her? She was just a simple girl from a small town. She wasn't a princess. She wasn't a queen. She was nobody special, at least in the eyes of the world. But Gabriel could see what God saw, and God saw someone very special indeed.
"Do not be afraid, Mary," the angel said gently, "for you have found favor with God." Then Gabriel told her the most astonishing news anyone had ever heard. "You will become pregnant and give birth to a son, and you will name him Jesus. He will be great and will be called the Son of the Most High. His kingdom will never, ever end." Mary's mind must have been spinning. A son? But how? She and Joseph weren't married yet. This didn't make any sense at all. So Mary asked the only question that made sense to ask. "How can this be? I am not yet married." Gabriel explained that this baby would not come the way babies normally come. "The Holy Spirit will come upon you, and the power of the Most High will overshadow you. So the Holy Child to be born will be called the Son of God." This was a miracle, unlike anything that had ever happened before. Mary would carry God's own Son inside her. Gabriel had one more piece of news. Mary's cousin Elizabeth, who everyone thought was too old to have a baby, was also expecting a baby. "Nothing is impossible with God," Gabriel told her. Think about that for a second. God had already been working behind the scenes, quietly preparing two miracles at the very same time, one in Elizabeth's home and one right in front of Mary. God's plans are always bigger than we realize, even when we can't see the whole picture yet. Now, imagine you're Mary for just a moment. You're young, you're not married yet, and an angel just told you that you're going to have a baby who will be God's own son. Wouldn't that be scary? Wouldn't you have so many questions? But Mary's answer is one of the most beautiful moments in the whole Bible. She didn't argue, she didn't run away, she simply said, "I am the Lord's servant. May it be done to me according to your word." That's it. That's her answer. Total trust, total surrender. Even though she didn't understand everything, she trusted that God knew what he was doing. Soon after, Mary hurried to visit her cousin Elizabeth, who lived in the hill country, quite far from Nazareth. The moment Mary walked in and greeted her, something amazing happened. The baby inside Elizabeth, who would grow up to be John the Baptist, jumped for joy. Elizabeth felt it and was filled with the Holy Spirit. "Blessed are you among women," Elizabeth cried out happily, "and blessed is the child you will bear." Mary stayed with Elizabeth for about 3 months, and it must have been such a comfort to be with someone who believed her incredible story. The two women probably spent hours talking about their babies, wondering what it would be like, laughing together, and praising God for his goodness. Sometimes, when God asks us to carry something hard or something we don't fully understand, he sends someone alongside us so we don't have to carry it alone. For Mary, that someone was Elizabeth. But back home in Nazareth, things were not so easy. When Joseph found out Mary was expecting a baby, he was heartbroken. He knew the baby wasn't his, and back then, this could have brought terrible shame on Mary. Joseph, being a good and kind man, decided he would quietly end the engagement instead of making a big public scene. But God wasn't finished helping Joseph understand. One night, an angel appeared to Joseph in a dream. "Joseph, son of David, do not be afraid to take Mary home as your wife," the angel said, "because what is conceived in her is from the Holy Spirit. She will give birth to a son, and you are to name him Jesus, because he will save his people from their sins." When Joseph woke up, he did exactly what the angel told him. He took Mary as his wife and prepared to raise this special baby as his own. Imagine the relief Mary must have felt. For weeks, she may have wondered if Joseph would ever understand, if he would still love her, if he would stand beside her. And now, here he was, choosing her, choosing them, trusting God's plan just like she had.
If this story is already moving you, Go ahead and hit that like and subscribe button right now so you never miss a story like this one.
Months passed, and Mary's belly grew round with the baby growing inside her. But then, when she was very close to giving birth, something inconvenient happened. The Roman Emperor, Caesar Augustus, ordered a census, which meant that every single person had to travel to their family's hometown to be counted. For Joseph, that meant a long journey, all the way to Bethlehem, the city of King David, his ancestor. And Mary, even though she was about to have her baby any day, had to travel with him. Can you imagine that? Riding on a donkey, bumping along dusty, rocky roads for miles and miles while you're about to have a baby? It must have been so uncomfortable, so tiring, so hard. The journey from Nazareth to Bethlehem was almost 90 miles, a trip they could take 4 or 5 days on foot or by donkey. Every bump in the road, every hill, every cold night camping outdoors, Mary endured it all, quietly trusting that God was watching over her and the baby growing inside her. When they finally arrived in Bethlehem, exhausted from the journey, they discovered terrible news. There was no room for them anywhere. Every inn, every guest room, every place to stay was completely full. And that is when Mary went into labor. With nowhere else to go, Joseph found a stable, a place where animals were kept, and that is where Mary gave birth to her son. Can you picture it? No soft bed, no warm blankets waiting, just hay, animals, and the quiet dark of night. Mary wrapped her newborn baby snugly in cloths and gently laid him in a manger, a feeding trough for animals, because there was nowhere else for him to rest. The Son of God, the Savior of the whole world, born not in a palace, not in a mansion, but in a humble stable, surrounded by sheep and donkeys. Isn't that just incredible? The most important baby who would ever live began his life in the simplest, humblest way possible. That very night, out in the fields nearby, something wonderful was happening too. Shepherds were watching their sheep when suddenly the sky filled with light. An angel appeared and told them the joyous news. A Savior had been born in Bethlehem. And then a whole army of angels appeared, praising God and singing, "Glory to God in the highest, and on earth peace to all whom his favor rests." The shepherds ran as fast as they could to find this baby, and when they found Mary, Joseph, and baby Jesus lying in the manger, just as the angels had described, they were overjoyed. They told everyone what they had seen and heard. And Mary? The Bible tells us that Mary treasured up all these things and pondered them in her heart. She didn't fully understand everything that was happening, but she held on to every moment, every word, every miracle, keeping it close like a treasure box in her heart. Have you ever had a moment so special that you just wanted to remember it forever, to hold on to every little detail? That's exactly what Mary was doing. While shepherds went out telling everyone the good news, Mary sat quietly, watching her baby sleep, thinking about everything the angel had said, everything that had happened, and wondering what wonderful things were still to come. Not long after Jesus was born, wise men from a faraway country arrived in Bethlehem, following a bright, mysterious star across the sky. They had traveled for months searching for a newborn king. When they finally found Mary and baby Jesus, they knelt down and worshiped him, presenting him with treasures fit for royalty, gold, frankincense, and myrrh. Mary must have been amazed. Shepherds and wise travelers from distant lands, all coming to honor her little baby? Surely, she thought, this truly was no ordinary child. But not everyone was happy about the newborn king. A jealous ruler named Herod grew frightened and angry when he heard the news, and he wanted to harm baby Jesus. So, once again, an angel appeared, this time warning Joseph in a dream to escape to Egypt right away. In the middle of the night, Mary, Joseph, and baby Jesus fled to safety, becoming refugees in a foreign land until it was safe to return home. Even from his very first days, Jesus' life was full of danger, yet God always protected him. As Jesus grew, Mary continued to watch him closely, amazed by who he was becoming. When Jesus was just a young boy, Mary and Joseph took him to Jerusalem for the Passover festival, as they did every year. But on the journey home, disaster struck. They realized Jesus wasn't with them. They searched frantically among their relatives and friends, but he was nowhere to be found. Can you imagine how terrified Mary must have felt? Her heart must have been racing with fear. Mary and Joseph rushed back to Jerusalem, searching for 3 long days. Finally, they found him, sitting in the temple courts, surrounded by religious teachers, listening and asking incredible questions. Everyone who heard him was amazed at his understanding. "Son, why did you treat us like this?" Mary asked, her relief mixed with worry. "Your father and I have been anxiously searching for you." Jesus answered gently, "Why were you searching for me? Didn't you know I had to be in my Father's house?" Mary didn't fully understand what he meant that day, but once again, she treasured these words in her heart. Years later, Mary would watch her son grow into a man who healed the sick, taught crowds of people, performed miracles, and loved everyone he met. Imagine being his mother, watching a blind man see again, watching someone who couldn't walk suddenly jump up and dance, watching crowds of thousands be fed from just a few loaves of bread and a couple of small fish. Every single day must have felt like another reminder of just how special her son truly was.
She was there at a wedding in Cana when Jesus turned water into wine, his very first miracle, all because Mary quietly asked him to help. She simply turned to the servants and said, "Do whatever he tells you." Mary trusted her son completely, even before anyone else really understood who he was. But Mary also experienced the deepest sorrow a mother could ever face. Years earlier, when Jesus was just a tiny baby, an old and wise man named Simeon had held him in his arms at the temple and told Mary that a sword would one day pierce her own soul, warning her that great joy would come, but also great sorrow. Mary probably didn't fully understand those words back then, but now, standing here, watching her son suffer, she finally understood exactly what he meant. She stood at the foot of the cross when her son was crucified, watching him suffer and die. Her heart must be breaking into a million pieces. Can you imagine the pain in her heart? No mother should ever have to watch her child go through something so painful. Yet Mary stayed. She didn't run away. She stayed close to Jesus until his very last breath, just as she had stayed faithful to God's plan from the very beginning. But the story doesn't end in sadness. 3 days later, Jesus rose from the dead. Death could not hold him down. Mary's sorrow turned into overwhelming joy as she realized her son had conquered death itself, just as he said he would. Mary's story teaches us so many powerful lessons that still matter today, lessons that are just as true for us now as they were for her thousands of years ago. First, God chooses the humble. Mary wasn't rich, powerful, or famous. She was just an ordinary girl. But God saw her heart, and that was more than enough. You don't need to be famous or important for God to use you in big ways. Second, trusting God doesn't always understand everything. Mary didn't understand how she could have a baby or why her son had to suffer, but she trusted God anyway. Sometimes we won't understand everything happening in our lives either, but we can still choose to trust that God has a good plan. Finally, staying faithful through hard times brings incredible joy in the end. Mary stayed faithful through fear, through confusion, through danger, through running away in the middle of the night, through years of watching, waiting, and wondering, and through the hardest moment any mother could ever face, standing at the foot of a cross. And because she stayed faithful through all of it, she witnessed one of the greatest miracles in all of history, her son alive again, rising from the dead, death itself defeated forever. Mary reminds us that God can take the humblest beginnings, a stable, a manger, an ordinary girl from Nazareth, and turn them into something absolutely extraordinary.
The next time life feels small or unimportant, remember Mary saying yes to God even when she didn't understand. Remember her holding her newborn baby in a stable full of animals. Remember her standing bravely at the cross and rejoicing at the empty tomb. Thank you so much for watching the story of Mary, the mother of Jesus. If this story touched your heart, please like this video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on the notification bell so you never miss another incredible Bible story. Can you guess whose story we should tell next? Let me know in the comments below. God bless you, and I will see you in the next story.